I don't think before the season a single soul would have told you that Curtis Jones was the key to Iowa State men's basketball success this season, yet here we are discussing it as a real possibility on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and for making this your first watch or listen. Wherever you're watching or listening, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today, it is all men's basketball yet again, as it has been described as great theater. I couldn't agree more, honestly, as painful as it is sometimes. The lows and the highs, they come in tandem. Okay, that's how it works. Before we can break down the ins and the outs, the nitty-gritty of Iowa State men's basketball, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Now, to start today's episode, we're going to be answering the question, is Curtis Jones the guy? I don't know, man. That's a tough question. I'm not even going to lie to you. I think a better question here is actually, is Curtis Jones three-point shooting the answer? But obviously, we'll break that down in greater detail. And to do that, I went into Iowa State's schedule this season and broke it down into two parts, as you do. Conference and non-conference, okay? Non-conference coming first, then conference coming second. Then on top of that, I decided to subsect that into four different segments, okay? You've got non-conference games that are not important. You've got non-conference games that are important. So non-conference, not important. Non-conference, important. Conference games with Milan. Conference games without Milan, okay? Now, that's not necessarily in order that they happened. Obviously, the non-conference, non-important games are kind of filtered throughout. So the non-conference games that I deemed to be important were Auburn, Dayton, Colorado, obviously the Maui Invitational, then Marquette, and I also put Iowa in there. Now, is that necessary? Oh, it's a stretch. Iowa not very good this year, but still a rivalry game, and we'll get into kind of why I chose that a little bit more in a second here as well. I was thinking about this after the Arizona game in particular because Curtis Jones did not shoot very well against Arizona. And I remember, if you can think back, against West Virginia, Curtis Jones didn't have a standout game against West Virginia either. 2 losses in our last 4 games. It feels like that's not a great sign. And I'm going to be completely honest here. Take a second with me. Stay with me here. Stay with me. I so seriously, genuinely hope that not a single soul sees this video besides only Iowa State fans. And I'm not even joking. Because if I'm onto something here and other teams are able to use this, I don't know if I'll be able to live with myself, to be completely honest. But sometimes it's got to be said. I'm here for you guys. I dove into the numbers. And I am genuinely scared that maybe some little Kansas scout takes a look, looks up Cyclones, finds this show, they watch this segment, and they're like, oh my gosh, we figured it out. I really hope I'm wrong. Really hope I'm wrong. That being said, I took a look. We have obviously played 9 conference games up until this point. 7-2 in the conference. And obviously the 2 losses coming most recently, which is why we're talking about them. And I'm just trying to figure out how I really want to phrase this because I want it to hit like the impact here. The biggest thing with the conference games is the split in Milan. And I took a look at Curtis Jones' numbers in minutes throughout the course of the conference play, starting out at 29 minutes, 28 minutes or so for those first 2 games, working his way up to 35 minutes prior to Milan's injury. And then Milan gets hurt, and we haven't seen him dip below 34. 36, 36, 34, 40, and then a 41, obviously, in an overtime game. So his number of minutes has increased almost linearly, which is interesting. But we've also seen him kind of take on a bit of a larger role in scoring. That being said, I will transition to the non-conference games. We're largely dominated by Keyshawn Gilbert. At this point in the season, we were very realistically looking at Keyshawn Gilbert being Big 12 Player of the Year, National Player of the Year. He was playing at a level simply that could not be paralleled by any regular human, I don't think. I hope it comes back. There was a couple layups against Arizona that I watched, and I was like, I mean, literally how? That being said, we're going to kind of ignore those games. They're important to this overall argument, but we're mostly going to ignore them as it was Gilbert, Momcilovic, Gilbert, and then Jones against Iowa that were your leading scorers. Okay. Then in conference play, obviously, Jones started to see himself kind of come into his own as we neared the end of non-conference play here. Omaha, Morgan State, obviously both big games. Not maybe in standings, but they round out that kind of non-conference there. And Iowa was kind of the turning point, in my opinion, which is why I included them in here, where we saw Jones really come onto the scene. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong in that. Obviously, the leading scorer against Jackson State, but I don't know. That to me, that felt different. He went 5 of 10 from 3. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it was Jackson State and they scored 100, and it's like, okay, everybody's going to get theirs. And he still only put up 19. Maybe that's why I'm putting it there. Either way, it really felt like Iowa was the game where Curtis Jones came into play. And then since conference play started, he has led the team in scoring 6 of 9 games. 3 of the games were not him. Those 3 games were Baylor, in which Gilbert was our leading scorer. Let me pull that up here really quick because I'll give you the number. Baylor, Gilbert did it with 16. UCF, Jefferson did it with 30. And then just the other night, Arizona doing it against Arizona, Lipsy doing it with 18. So then I was like, okay, well, maybe we can't draw a direct correlation between scoring and Curtis Jones scoring at that and Iowa State's record. Okay, well, that's actually a good sign. I don't want to see a direct that's what we've been preaching all year is this team is so good they can beat you in any way, shape, or form. And that's why I'm still on the fence about this. But then, I was like, okay, maybe it's not about points, but it's about percentage shooting. Well, Cujo's kind of just really good. Other than the Arizona game, his worst night shooting was 31% against Colorado, and he still scored 20. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of hard to look at something and be really nitpicky and say, well, even against, West Virginia, he shot 50%, shot 8 of 16. Was he lights out? No, but he still had 18 points, still shot 50%. So now I'm starting to think, okay, this is where I was going to go with segment 1. Didn't love it, but I am certainly, I'm torn. Like, what do I put for segment 1? But also, I'm glad that this is not the case. Then I came across this statistic, and we'll wrap it up here real quick. Iowa State is 0-2 in games in which Curtis Jones shoots 28.6% or less from 3. So, in long story short, I felt it in my bones. It was the 3-point shooting. Against West Virginia, he goes 1 of 6. Against Arizona, he goes 0 for 8. His 2 worst shooting percentages, he did shoot 28.6% twice against UCF and against Colorado, 2 of 7 on both of those occasions, 1 of 6 against West Virginia, 0 of 8 against Arizona, as I just said. Is this a big deal? Probably not. We'll break it down in the third segment just a little bit more. But it is certainly, it's something. It's something we have to pay attention to. I think it's related to potentially the offensive scheme, like the way that we go about offense. If he's struggling, it doesn't mean we can't win, but I'm seeing a trend that there is kind of a threshold. We kind of need at least a big boost and help. Outside of that, because those other games, I'm trying to find, like 28.6 Colorado, UCF, Jefferson steps up. The Colorado one, however, Jones was still the leading scorer, but Jefferson steps up, scores 30 against UCF. So I'm just saying there's a trend. Do I think he's the absolute end all be all to this team? No, I think this team can still beat you in a lot of ways. But I did notice that, and I wanted to bring it to your attention. Hopefully nobody else sees that. That being said, TJ Otzelberger got on a mic after they lost to Arizona, and obviously, we have to talk about that. It'll be coming up right after this. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, tails never fails, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 59. TJ Otzelberger jumped on the mic after Iowa State lost to Arizona. Late night, obviously, for the Iowa State Cyclones, but the end of a road trip out in the great state of Arizona. Obviously, Taman Lipsy mentioned how nice it is out there, but he can't wait to get back home to Ames, home of the Cyclones. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This one was an interesting Otz's thoughts for me, because I watched the entire presser, which was shorter than usual. I don't blame him. Tough loss. But no real, and granted, this is a post-game presser. These post-game pressers are a little bit different than media availability from what we hear from Otz. But no real quotes came out of this. So I watched it again, and I watched it again, and I watched it again. And honestly, I could literally just watch TJ Otzelberger on a mic on repeat for the rest of my life. Like, some people put music in, they go walking down the street. I just put in Otz talking because he just unbelievable. But either way, neither here nor there. I just kept watching it, hoping that like I could get something out of it, because it felt like just post-game jargon, just coaches speak. But then I listened to it kind of like the 20th time and was like, you know what? Actually, his tone feels different here. His tone feels very different. What I was able to gather is that essentially, to me, the main difference, he went about this post-game, because let me say before I get to what he was going at, remember, it's been brought up in the comments below. These are still college students, right? These are still human beings. Let's put it that way. And I do love that when that gets brought up. It's like, it's so easy to just slap the jersey on and think of them only as athletes, and they don't do anything outside of that. They still got classes, man. They're student athletes. So don't think that these players don't see what's going on around them. They don't read any media. They don't use any social media. They don't ever look at what their coach says to the media. Of course they do. Of course. So as much as TJ Otzelberger is talking to the media and giving everyone in that room, and myself through YouTube included, a story to talk about, he's also talking to his teammates. He talked to them in the locker room, and now he's talking to them essentially again without talking to them. You have to be very careful what you say at all times. I'm aware of this. So is he. That being said, I picked up on a bit of a feel from Otzelberger that was similar to that of, we played a really good game and we got beat. That's what's going to happen sometimes. Shout out Arizona. Very good basketball team. Very good coaching staff. Very good fans, environment, everything. Arizona, you got us. Let's move on. It felt to me like he was able to point out a few things, but when is he not pointing out things that he's like, we could do this better, we could do this better, but it felt like it was done less in this post-game presser. It felt, the tone of the words coming out of his mouth to me felt more just, hey man, they beat us. They beat us. Can't wait to get back to work. Obviously, we and he threw something in there. I didn't want to actually quote it. I didn't think this was top of the line, but basically what he said was, we do this all summer. We work for adversity. We want to do well through adversity, perform well through adversity. We're going to use this. We'll get back on the horse, basically, is what he said. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it felt a lot like coaches speak. It was just the tone and it was more almost what he didn't say than what he did say. What he did say during that presser was mostly, hey, shout out Arizona. Very good basketball team. We're going to be okay. We're going to bounce back, and we're going to be back, obviously, in Ames. Excited to be back in Ames in front of our fans. Let's go. To me, that message is very much, look, guys, that was a heartbreaker. Okay. And it was mentioned in the comments, the same comment I'm referencing here. Basically, whatever we felt on couch was probably 2, 3, 4 times, 5 times worse in that arena for the Cyclones, wearing the actual jerseys, right? These Taman Lipsy, Keyshawn, I don't need to name all the names. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The players and the coaches. They felt that more than we did. And well, I know all of us felt it. So I think, in my opinion, this is my own thought. So I'm not trying to say anything here. I'm just saying it appeared to me like TJ was like, look, that one hurt, guys, but we're fine. Let's not like kick it while it's down kind of deal, right? We played okay. We played pretty solid. We won that game, essentially. It's not what he said, but it's how I took it. He's like, hey, we were in that to the very end. To the very end. And they made a 48-footer on us. And he was asked, which I mentioned yesterday, about do you foul in that last moment? Was there ever a thought of fouling with those few seconds left on the clock? And he said, there was maybe a thought at 20.6. We decided this is how, basically at 2 point whatever. What are the odds he makes that shot? Not great. So the analytics are probably going to say you don't foul there, which is what I kind of was thinking. You don't give them the chance to get closer to the hoop, make them make it from that far. And they did. And sometimes that's going to happen. And that's how it felt in that presser. He was essentially saying, look, man, sometimes they're going to make 48-footers. But guess what? This is not our last game, right? This was only game 9 of conference play. We haven't even hit the halfway mark. We cannot get caught up on this Arizona loss. Sure. One of the best teams in the conference. Yeah. Okay. Well, we got another game. And then another one after that. And then another one after that. It's not like if we lose this one, we're just done. We got to go. We are still playing basketball. That's how it felt to me. And am I wrong? Maybe. Get TJ Otzelberger to tell me it. I'd love to hear it, actually, genuinely. But I'm saying this. I actually love it. I love that approach. Don't dwell on it too much. Sure, you could have played better. I don't think Iowa State's put together a full 40 minutes of perfect basketball, and honestly, I don't know if they ever will. Not a knock on Iowa State or this team. It's just so hard to do, which is the beauty in it. Every game, they're learning and getting better. Every single game, right? So to nitpick all the little things from that game, from the end of that game, from the overtime. And he mentioned, like, hey, we tried kind of to take the advantage of that moment. They give up, Arizona shoots a 48-footer, place literally blows the roof off the place, right? How do you come back from that? Well, they win the tip, they get the first possession, they score. Like, that's a pretty good start. Then, unfortunately, things went the way they did, and Arizona hits 3 straight threes. It's a tough spot to be in. It is. And I know I spent all day yesterday nitpicking all these things, but I'm not the head coach. And so TJ taking his opportunity behind a mic when he knows his team is going to see this to say, look, that's going to happen sometimes. We're still a really good team. We're still going to be just fine. We got plenty of games we got to prep for. We come prepared for this. We handle adversity. Let's get on to the next one. I love it. I love it. That's why TJ Otzelberger is one of the best in the nation, right there. That's how he handles his team. No highs, no lows. We stay in the middle at all times. I love it. So that's Otz's thoughts for this week. A little bit different. Didn't pull any quotes. It was an overall vibe of that post-game presser. And you could feel it from Taman. You could feel, if you go watch it, just beginning to end, you can feel the dynamic shift a little bit. Of course, it is minuscule because they just got their hearts ripped out in Arizona. Mine's still laying on the floor. I'll pick it up at some point. But you can see it. These guys fight for TJ, man. This is still a very, very good basketball team. Crushing loss to West Virginia. Crushing loss to Arizona. Double crushing, if you will. Still a lot of games left. A lot of basketball. Like I said, you're a 16 seed, you're a 1 seed, you play the same amount of games. That's all I'm saying, you know. A lot of games left, though. You know what that means. A lot of basketball, right? A lot of basketball games. That's how that works. We got to talk about, is this Iowa State team in a little bit of a lull at this point in the season? It kind of feels that way, but let's break it down. Coming up right after this on Locked On Cyclones. So Iowa State men's basketball, 7-2 in conference after the loss to Arizona. Certainly a heartbreaker, but a lot of games left to play. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I do apologize for dancing around the point a little bit in the first segment about, is Cujo the key to Iowa State men's basketball? Is he the guy? Is it his three-point shooting? At the end of the day, he shoots threes. When he doesn't shoot them very well, Iowa State has been shown to lose, unfortunately. The other key piece to this, however, which I touched on, and it really only got brought up because of the amount of minutes that we saw an increase in Cujo's play, is Milan Momcilovic's injury. Okay. I'm bringing that up because we're here to, this segment is dedicated to, is this a lull or a low point in the season for the Cyclones? 2 losses in 4 games, both on the road. 1 home game in this 4-game stretch. You get the win at Arizona State, and now you're at home against Kansas State on Saturday. What are we looking at here? How? Let's just do a vibe check. Well, vibe check, I don't know. We probably still pass that. Let's just be a little optimistic here. That being said, I bring up the Momcilovic injury because without Momcilovic, we are 3-2. With him, we are 4-0 in conference play. And then obviously, if you want to bring up the 5 games that I brought up as the important non-conference games, we're 4-1. Then you include so it's 8-1 essentially with Momcilovic in important games, important non-conference or conference, because all conference games are important. I believe from the eye test, I don't know if this is accurate, so don't come at me for this one, but I just feel like this team looks tired. Now, I don't necessarily mean I don't mean on the floor, okay? They're still superior athletes. These guys are unbelievable. I almost mean mentally, and that feels like a bigger dig, but it's just that, like, it's a hard season. It's a grueling season, right? 20 conference games? Are you kidding me? It's a lot of conference games. And then you go down, I mean, Milan is kind of like the guy. He's not the guy, but he's kind of the guy. You know what I mean? It's going to hurt the team. They want to see Milan out there. So you start the season, conference-wise, 4-0. Colorado, Baylor, Utah, Texas Tech with Milan. Okay? Big wins over Colorado, Baylor, and Utah. Then you get tested on the road at Texas Tech. 1-point overtime win. Huge win. Momentum win for the Cyclones. Then you find out it's around the 14th or the 15th that Milan gets injured. We find out a few hours before the game. Not going to play against Kansas. Certainly a blow, but you still beat Kansas in Ames, in Hilton. Electric atmosphere. Don't get me wrong. You win that game pretty handily, too. Feeling really good. Then you go to West Virginia, and now it feels like it's settled in. 3 days later, Milan is not going to be on this court. You lose in West Virginia. We've talked about the Cujo 3-point shooting. Then you come back home for UCF. You handle business. You go to Arizona State for this 2-game Arizona road trip kind of deal. You handle business in Arizona State, especially in the last 5 minutes. Then you go to Tucson, and you don't get it done essentially by a miracle. Unfortunate. The way that all flies is you have 5 games in 12 days, right? So kind of like boom, 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 boom. I think that was 6 booms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. All right. I'm not the Costco guys. I don't know how to count to 5. 5 big booms. That being said, I do feel like this team just feels very mentally tired. The travel, you go to the East Coast at West Virginia, you come back home, you go out to Arizona. It's a lot. More minutes for more guys with the Milan injury. Obviously, Demarion Watson, stepping up big time for this Cyclone team. Very much so. I mean, the box score might not be screaming to you that Demarion Watson is the answer, but he's making plays when it counts. Certainly. Right? I mean, that's just what it is. And what we're seeing is an increase in minutes from everybody. We're seeing an increase from Cujo, who goes from essentially like that 28 minutes as mentioned, 29 minutes up to 40 against Arizona State in a regulation game, and against Arizona, 41 minutes, which was an overtime game. Okay. You see Taman Lipsy with 41 minutes with an injured thumb. Okay. You see Joshua Jefferson, 39 minutes. Keyshawn Gilbert, 42 minutes. Those guys were tired at the end of that game. And I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying we're starting to kind of see this middle of the season just, holy cow, this is a lot of games. We lost one of our dudes. Minutes are up. You got to stay focused. So to answer the question, is this a low point in the season? Yes, you go 2-2 in your last 4. And lull, I think yes as well. I think we have hit a little bit of a momentum. We're at 0. You're up with Kansas and the Texas Tech win, although Texas Tech felt shaky. Then West Virginia knocks you down a notch, but you're okay. You score 108 against UCF. You're right back up. The big win over Arizona State, and then the Arizona one was just such a heartbreaker. It feels like we're at 0 right now. The good news, however, is we have time. It is currently, as you're watching or listening to this, wherever you are, be sure to subscribe, Wednesday, right? Wednesday, they don't play again until Saturday. So all day Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, then on Saturday. That's still 4 days, and they didn't play yesterday. They played on Monday night. So they've got some rest, which is very, very good. Then they get back into a bit of a flurry, right? They go 5 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in 15 days. It's not as bad as these 5 and 12. Still, the question now is really, when does Milan get back? Because if we're looking at that 4 to 6 week range, we're looking at Colorado on the 18th to maybe Arizona on the 1st, Oklahoma State on the 25th. We still have a lot of games to go without Milan. This team can do it, but we're certainly in a position right now where we got to lock in a little bit. And thankfully, we get a little bit of a mini bye here. Couple days off. We can really lock in, get to practice, get our breath, execute, and then do as TJ says, get the daily habits back. We'll be back in Ames, get a few days here. It's like, oh, they're only playing 1 game in Ames. Okay, but look at the amount of days, though. They got in Tuesday morning, 5:30 or something. You get all of Tuesday, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That's almost a full week. That's 5 full days. And then you're probably not on the road until Monday because it's an 8 p.m. game in Kansas. So you get almost a full week of able to build up those habits, which is what this team is built on. I think this could be a huge refresher for the Iowa State Cyclones. I really do. I think this is much needed, comes at a very much needed time. They always say the bye comes at the perfect time. I think this is literally the perfect time. It feels like the team's spiraling a little bit and a little bit of a lull. We're fine. But this is much needed. Certainly much needed. That being said, thank you for making it this far. Shout out to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Tomorrow, we'll break down the women's team. We haven't talked about them yet because the men's team is so big right now, but the women are still playing, and they're very much in this whole thing. So we'll have to talk about that tomorrow. But until then, Cyclone fans, sayonara.